Hello? Food playing on mind? Guys, can I hear a hi? Good afternoon. Hello, pleasure, pleasure. Good to have you guys here. All right, so very interesting conversation today. As we all know, TV in this industry has been divided into two parts, right? Linear, which has a massive scale, but is largely considered blind. And then you have digital, right? Which is smart, data-driven, where all the targeting comes in, where all of you see ads that you are targeted for, consumed it, right? But today, on this panel, right, our focus is to talk about how the two partners, Google and INVIDI, they've come together, collaborated for a groundbreaking technology that brings programmatic advertising onto your linear devices. Imagine you're watching TV, some show, somewhere, some channel. You and your parents living in a different city watching the same show are probably getting different ads. Just what you need, right? Just what you need to get your product to the users you're interested in. So we are talking about DTH and cable television, devices where there is no internet, where there is no return path. How do you actually target them? On this panel with me, I have some of the elites, the architects for that solution, who are going to tell you about what to do when you're talking about linear, how to target them, what programmatic brings to the table, right? And then essentially, how to improve your revenue, because end of the day, money is what matters, right? So with me, the architects here include, right next to me is Shrey, as you all know, lead for Google Exchange India. He's the one who's talking about programmatic, bringing one of the most advanced technology on advertising to this planet, to your living rooms. Next to him, I have Rajiv, head of WPP for Advanced TV, India. And he's the one who's representing all the powerhouse brands who want to reach the market with precision, but at scale. And lastly, I have Prasad, my boss, who's here. And he's going to talk about the tech that makes the impossible ad serving possible. Welcome and thank you, all of you, for being here.
Thanks, Deepti.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deepti.
All right. So with that, I think I have first question for you, Prasad, right? Before we delve into the details of how Shrey and Rajiv are going to make this wonderful money for us, I want to understand how would you make sure that a targeted ad is delivered to a set-top box that's unconnected?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Shrey, Rajiv, and Deepti as well. Right. Just before we got into the stage, I just heard a comment that, hey, the TV is only for tier 2 and tier 3, right? I just want to set the context here because I know there are a lot of TV and cable guys here, right? So we are actually talking about 210 million households who watch TV in India still, right? We are a global company, so I can actually give some quotes in terms of how it's happening elsewhere. And out of that, the pay TV market is about 110 million, right? And then the reach of the TV itself is about 700 million users. And that's not an insignificant amount of money. In fact, if I take any broadcasters out here, their bread and butter is still money coming from the advertising on the linear TV, right? As INVIDI, which I represent, so we both do digital as well as linear solutions. Now, we see the digital growing tremendously, like a CTV, for example, with a 13 million base. But you still have TV stuck in the legacy systems, and then you still have about 700 million reach out there. So what we actually bring to the table is what we call as addressable advertising. And this is deployed, this is not something new, it's being deployed across globe, right? We do that for DirecTV, Dish, Verizon, and few other partners across globe. Addressable advertising is essentially like how do you bring targeted advertising onto linear TV? Largely, you can actually extend it to CTV, of course, like that's what it is, right? And what we do is the TV buying is largely spot-based. So if most of you are digital, but some of the TV guys would know, you actually go buy a 30-second spot. If you're watching IPL on live TV, that's exactly what you do, right? The digital, on the other hand, runs on impression-based things. So these are two different currencies. So as part of addressable advertising, what we do is we change the currency from spot-based buying to impression-based buying. That's what addressable is. So when you do that, something wonderful happens, right? You can actually bring the digital workflows onto the TV buying, right? Because impression is the currency that digital understands. When you transform, the transformation happens because of the INVIDI's tech and all that, right? And when you bring the digital workflows onto the TV, right, you can use the same workflows that you're using on the digital side of things and then start buying the TV as well. The magic of how it gets done is all behind the scenes. But you can still do impression-based buying on the TV, right, which is happening. So we work with Tata Play, for example. We also work with partners like GTPL and then a few others, where we deploy this tech, and then a lot of channels get modernized because of that. And lastly, what happens because of that is, because the digital workflows have come in, we have been working with Google for the last 6 to 7 months, their global teams. And we actually mapped the entire programmatic workflow where you have a programmatic guaranteed buys onto the TV buys. So essentially you have your demand side and you have the supply side, which is the GAM in this case. And from the demand side, you can actually create a deal, for example, and it flows all the way down to buying the TV, right? That's essentially what we have done with folks from Google, including Shrey and the team, and also the folks from Mountain, right? I think this is a new frontier where you can actually buy TV from programmatic and also brings a kind of adjacency to the CTV, right? That's essentially what this whole tech is about.
Okay, thank you. So Shrey, so the question is to you, right? Yep. Google has been predominantly a player in the digital space. Well, player is not the word, leader in the digital space, okay? This is linear. What makes you think about it? Why is it so important? Why is Google looking at the linear side of the world?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the lens of the India market first, Deepti. I think, and Prasad, thanks for sharing all the details. When you talk about a 700 million number of, in terms of people on linear TV, at least in India, linear TV is not going anywhere, right? So, and we understand that. As Google, our ambition is to ensure that our publishers and our broadcasters kind of get the maximum yield out of their inventory, right? We've been hearing from publishers, broadcasters across India and the globe, and that's why this is something that is strategically being done across the globe as well, that there is inventory and there is incremental demand that they want to tap into from digital. There are a lot of benefits that will be automatically, organically transferred to our broadcasters and publishers by getting this inventory on programmatic, the biggest one being measurement. They'll be able to showcase the efficacy of their inventory beyond just GRPs, which is already available on CTV. So, and we are going down the funnel with that. So, yeah, I think as Google, that's what we do. We become enablers to both the advertisers and the publishers, and there's enough merit for both of them here. And on to top that, I believe it's also the best experience for the user, because if you have linear TV getting programmatic ads, then you're serving the right ad to the right user in the right context, which means the user also gets a better experience. So, and that's what we do. We want to make the experience superior for the user. We want to enable our advertisers and enable our publishers at the same time as well.
Perfect. You're making TV intelligent. Yeah, all right. And moving on to then Rajiv, right? So this tech kind of changes things for the way the industry has been working, right? It allows you to reach the people, the right audiences, and make sure the brand gets there to the right people, right? So what do you think about it? How does it make changes to your overall business, right? The impact that it has on your partners, the buyers.
So from a pure agency lens, from how we started planning for advertisers, I think 5-6 years before, this would have been a fiction story for a planner to think that, okay, I can target a specific household, because that used to be channel-led, GRP-led, day-part-led planning, to now it's coming that, okay, I can buy audiences on TV, which I need. I think this is the first instance of maybe an audience brief and a media plan are both same for the first time, right? Because otherwise there used to be an audience brief, media plan has to kind of fit into whatever targeting capabilities each medium delivers. I think this gives a good segue to that. Okay, whatever my audience targeting is now, eventually it will be possible on television as well. And to add on to Prasad's point and to the earlier question here on how relevant the TV industry is, I think India is still the second largest market when it comes to television in the world. We are just behind China. Yes, China is multitudes away from us, but yes, still a significantly large TV market. And what we saw initially in terms of how connected television penetration was only to, let's say, only in the metros, today we are seeing that into more tier 1, tier 2. In fact, there is another definition of tier 3, tier 4, and tier 5 towns coming in with connected TV penetration. So I think the penetration of TV, irrespective of the distribution mode, will continue, right? So that's the first point. And hence, it will make a lot more sense for us to kind of plan TV as one holistic view. Distributions are multitude. Audience segments are a second aspect. And each will have its own layer and capabilities and the ability to kind of reach towards certain KPI. So from that point of view, is what I'm saying, 5 years back, what was it to now? I think there's a multitude of change. So definitely, we see from a household. In fact, when we launched Advanced TV white paper in 2022, Prasad, you might recollect, we announced 3 trends which will be future for TV. One is TV will soon be programmatic. I said television, not CTV. TV will be soon programmatic. Household IDs will emerge. We're seeing more signals. When you said TV is becoming more intelligent, is because household IDs and household attributes are coming back. And the third is that we might move into a space, or I see already we're moving into a multi-measurement ecosystem, cross-screen or cross-panel measurement, right? It will not be probably just that one organization which will solve it. We might need to lean on to multiple. I think a multitude of that data will also come in. So these are signals which we are seeing and continue to see. So I think it's going to be an interesting time for for us a planner, for an advertiser. It's going to be even more learning in terms of when you create these audience segments and start bucketing them into different media.
Perfect. So follow-up question, right? Do you think a cross ID, right, that matches the household environment with, let's say, a mobile phone, just to know what the subscriber's path is, right? Do you think something of that kind evolves us, takes us further?
It already exists in some form and shape. Where it doesn't exist, let's say in the case of pure cable and satellite equations where tech interventions will come in to solve that, right? So smart televisions and smart background will continue to share those household ID attributes. In linear, where we will not have that kind of, or return part data is still not accessible, is where tech interventions will solve it. So I think I see this as 2 different pillars which will eventually evolve to create household ID syncs and create overlapping, incremental. All these things will definitely are bound to happen.
Perfect. I think we will do encounter walled gardens, but let's hope we cross there.
I think it's a good point. Wall gardens is something which will continue to kind of create those aspects. That's when a household ID is not only one attribute alone. It's a consolidation of almost 10 to 12 other signals as well. So it's not that we are dependent on only one data signal to come in, right, Shrey? So I think in that way, we'll have multiple ways to look at our household ID. It may not be that one metric alone. It will be a combination of 3 to probably multitude.
Thank you. Thank you. So moving on to you, Prasad, right? As INVIDI, you sit on a lot of inventory, the visibility that you have across pretty much all the major broadcasters and cable partners. How do you think this tech enables their business? Is there something that it does for yield optimization? How do you see the market changing with this on the broadcaster and content owners side?
So on the outset, right, this actually helps to unlock a lot of revenue potential. The way I see it is because A lot of TV buying happens on a 30-second spot. When you take a 30-second spot and turn into impressions, then what you're actually doing is the sum of all the impression sales is going to be much, much more than the cost of one spot, right? So that's where the yield optimization happens. And we have seen that happening across the globe. We have seen about like 4x to 5x growth in the spot, the actual cost of the spot when you turn into all these impressions. That's the first part, right? The second part is TV always has what I call as a linear tax, right? You actually show an ad, and probably a large proportion of the audience are probably not even relevant there, right? When you turn that 30-second spot into an impression-based buying, and now with programmatic, now you are actually reducing a lot of wastage that is coming in, right? And thirdly, in terms of unlocking potential, India is largely an SME and SME-based advertising that actually flows into folks like Google and then even Meta, for example, right? And the barrier of entry for them to get into the TV is extremely high because you have to buy on a pan-Indian market, right? 30-second spot is very expensive. But with the ability to actually do addressable and turn the 30-second spot into impressions, now you have all these SMEs and SMBs can actually buy TV at a much lesser cost than possible. So we see them actually, the way I see them is to come and then buy the TV, which was not possible earlier.
Understand. Okay, so I have one question for all three of you, and I'd be happy if you can answer it from your own perspectives. Now that, we have linear TV, which is getting programmatic, so which I would call as advanced TV or TV plus narrative in the market. Shrey, how do you see this evolving as I compare value of impression on the linear television, programmatic-wise, as compared to value of an impression on the CTV angle?
I think we'll have to look at this from the point of view of this being a hybrid ecosystem, honestly, on the big screen, right? So if you look at what Prasad said and what Rajiv said, we at Google, we want to do this for the broadcasters in a way where we move them to more audience-based buying. That is the way the agency wants to buy. We want to ensure that they have incremental demand coming in from SMB advertisers or other advertisers who are today not able to buy linear TV for multiple targeting restrictions like location, demo, all of that. And from a measurement POV as well, CTV, I believe, in this hybrid ecosystem will continue to play the role of being the precision and performance engine. We've come to a stage where now CTV is a space where you can go full funnel and deliver business outcomes and low funnel outcomes. It will continue to do that, but a combination of both is already proven to do really well for businesses. For example, there's a recent Kanta study which talks about the overlap of linear, connected and unconnected, driving better conversions, north of 50%, compared to running a campaign singularly in silo, right, just on linear or connect TV. So I definitely feel it's going to be a hybrid ecosystem where you will eventually, as an advertiser and as a publisher, benefit from this approach that is taken by buyers, this approach that is offered by publishers. And yeah, it's just like a win-win for everybody in the ecosystem. So in terms of value, I feel it's going to be consistent, if not more, and just more value for both the advertiser and the publisher.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Yeah.
So over to you then, right? Now that we have normalized the currency to impression across this, same question to you. How do you think the value of an impression changes from the CTV to the TV plus programmatic narrative?
So I see this as TV, which is the large screen, and then there is two modes which will fragment them into two buckets. One is linear and one is addressable. Now that addressable will have multi-legs to it, right? One could be like what Prasad spoke about, how INVIDI, the project which we are doing with JioStar, creates that aspect of cable and satellite moving addressable. Second is connected television itself, by virtue of its medium is moving addressable. I'll give you two use cases which we are seeing. Let's say a CPG brand, a very traditional CPG brand who was very heavy on TV, reaches out to us with a business challenge, was to see how do I target differently in a specific market, and it had its own reason. So now we are suddenly linking it with a business outcome. And that's when linear layered with, like Shrey saying, linear layered with CTV, we were able to address that from one single medium itself. Another example was an automobile giant telling us that, very interesting feedback he had, that I see a hoarding, which would definitely be a flagship channel for automobile, where any consumer passing through at a 70 to 80 kilometer per hour sees that for a 3 seconds, right? To which now I can use the same locality to get it confined to a living room environment and serve an ad for, let's say, a 30-second or a 40-second, which means I can give him a little more view and understanding about my product, which never existed before, right? So the use cases are multiple. It's not just on incrementality. It's not just about impressions moving into GRPs. No, I think the use cases are multitude. So I feel there is a lot more business level outcomes which we'll be able to drive with this kind of a combination rather than only media objectives.
So what I read here is hybrid is the way to go and it opens up more
Absolutely.
horizons, right? Yeah. All right. Over to you, Prasad. Our times is up. So
I think the time's up, but
Yeah.
I'll just probably conclude this one, right? So we see the CTV to be having the strongest growth, right, as everybody said, right? But this provides the adjacency and the reach in addition to what the CTV is having, right? So that's how we see the whole thing growing, okay?
sure.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so the programmatic in digital works because you know the audience and you can serve the ad basis their interest habits behavior. But programmatic in linear TV, how you put a creative which is suitable for that audience and then they will go ahead and purchase the product. So how will programmatic work in terms of giving the right ad to the consumer on linear TV?
So I have to split the question into two parts, right? There is an element of, so when you talk about digital, there are multiple elements there. One is the targeting. Targeting is only one part of it. The other part is the measurement part. The other part is like the workflow part, right? Now, let me address the targeting, right? The TV, just by the nature of the unconnected environment, it is not necessary that you can actually target user one-on-one. But what we can actually go is creating the cohorts of users, right? And those cohorts of the users are what we are trying to target here, not a one-on-one. I don't expect there is any tech that actually takes a one-on-one to unconnected environments. But what we are trying to move is TV to a world where there are certain cohorts that can map onto the CTV as well. For example, like 8 metros. I'm just making up, right? The CTV, there's a lot of 8 metros kind of a buying that happens. And TV, that can happen right now, right? The rest of the elements in the measurement and workflow are very similar to what happens in the digital world.
Rajiv has something to add?
I just thought probably to just add one more point to that, and I think it's a very relevant question. So there are two ways, right? One is the feasibility of the platform, which is television, to target at a very hyperlocal level, right? That's the first layer. And then we need to identify audiences available at that hyperlocal. Right now, it could be multiple cohorts, like Prasad said. It could be on affinity, it could be on shopping, it could be on NCCS attributes, household income. It could be multiple, right? Ownership of two-wheeler, four-wheeler, all those things can be an attribute. But the first level was to see whether can we reach out to a much more geo-granular locality. I think that is correct. Now, segments are something which we can keep building, but there are plenty of data. It could be e-commerce data, it could be transaction data, which you can add layer to it. It could be corporate level data, right? So that keeps on adding to this layer, which makes it more richer from an audience segment perspective.
Thank you. If we have no more questions. All right. Thank you for being a wonderful audience.
Thank you so much. Request you to just come together for a group photograph, please.